When your heart feels heavy, this is what Jesus wants you to hear. There is a kind of weight that no one sees, and maybe that is exactly what makes it so hard to explain. You wake up, you go through your routine, you answer messages, you show up where you are expected to be, and from the outside, everything looks normal. But inside, something feels off. Not broken in a way that others would notice, but heavy in a way that never really leaves you. It is not always sadness. It is not always fear. Sometimes it is just a quiet pressure sitting in your chest, like something unresolved that follows you everywhere. You try to ignore it, you distract yourself, you tell yourself it will pass. But it does not pass. It lingers. And then the question begins to grow louder in your mind, even if you do not say it out loud. Where is God in all of this? Because you have not given up on your faith. You still believe. You still try to pray. But there are moments when it feels like your words are not reaching anywhere. Like you are speaking, but there is no response. Like you are seeking, but nothing moves. And that silence starts to do something dangerous. It makes you question not only your situation, but your connection. It makes you wonder if you are doing something wrong, if you are missing something, if somehow you have drifted without realizing it. But listen carefully. What you are feeling right now is not evidence of distance from God. It is often the place where something deeper is beginning to happen. Most people misunderstand this season. They rush to fix it, to escape it, to cover it up with distractions or forced positivity. They think the goal is to stop feeling this way as quickly as possible. But what if this heaviness is not something to run from? What if it is something to understand? Because there are moments in life where the noise fades, the certainty weakens, and all that is left is the raw truth of what is happening inside you. And it is in that place, not in the noise, not in the performance, but in the quiet weight of your own heart, that something real can finally begin. You are not here by accident. You did not click on this message randomly. There is something in you that recognized this feeling even before you had the words for it. So before you try to move past this weight, before you try to fix everything at once, stay here for a moment. Listen closely, because what you are about to understand may change the way you see your pain, your silence, and even your relationship with God. Now, let us talk about something most people carry, but rarely admit. The invisible weight no one sees. There is a reason why your heart feels this heavy, and it is not because you are weak. It is because you have been strong for too long, in ways no one noticed. You have carried things silently. You have endured moments that you never fully processed. You have faced disappointments that you told yourself to move on from, even when they stayed inside you. And over time, all of that began to accumulate. Not all burdens come from dramatic events. Some of the heaviest ones are built slowly. A prayer that felt unanswered. A hope that did not unfold the way you believed it would. A season where you expected clarity, but only found confusion. You kept going. You did not stop believing, but you also did not stop carrying. And this is where most people misunderstand their own condition. They think the problem is what is happening around them, but often the real weight is what has been left unresolved within them. The conversations you never had, the emotions you pushed aside, the moments when you needed comfort but chose silence instead. These things do not disappear. They settle deep inside your heart, shaping how you feel, how you think, and even how you relate to God. At some point, the weight becomes noticeable. Not all at once, but enough to make everything feel harder than it used to. Prayer feels heavier. Faith feels quieter. Even hope feels like something you have to force instead of something that flows naturally. But here is the truth you need to hear. None of this has ever been hidden from God. In the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28, Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He did not say come when you are strong. He did not say come when you have resolved everything inside you. He said come while you are carrying the weight. Which means this heaviness you feel is not a barrier between you and Him. It is the very reason He is calling you closer. So the real issue is not that you are carrying something. The real issue is that you have been trying to carry it alone. And if you have been doing that for longer than you should have, then what you are about to understand next may challenge everything you thought about strength. When the soul gets tired before the body, there is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. You can rest your body, you can take a break, you can even step away from responsibilities for a while, and still wake up feeling the same weight inside you. That is because what you are experiencing is not physical fatigue. It is something deeper. It is your soul asking for attention. This kind of tiredness does not come from doing too much. It comes from carrying too much for too long without release. It builds in silence, in the moments when you keep showing up while something inside you is slowly draining. You begin to notice it in small ways. Things that used to feel simple now feel heavy. Conversations require more effort. Decisions feel overwhelming. Even your connection with God feels distant, not because you do not care, but because you do not have the strength to engage the way you once did. And that creates confusion. Because on the outside, your life may look stable. You are still functioning, still moving, still doing what needs to be done. But inside, something feels depleted. This is where many people become hard on themselves. They start questioning their discipline, their faith, their consistency. They think, I should be stronger than this. I should not feel this way. But this is not a failure of character. It is a signal. Your soul is not designed to run endlessly without being renewed. It was never meant to carry pressure without being restored. And when that restoration is missing, the exhaustion begins to take over quietly. Even spiritually, this can become confusing. You may still pray, but it feels mechanical. You may still believe, but without the same conviction. You may still seek God, but without the same clarity. It feels like something has dimmed, and you do not know how to bring it back. But this is the moment where something important needs to be understood. Spiritual exhaustion is not a sign that God has moved away from you. It is often a sign that you have been trying to sustain yourself without fully receiving what He is offering. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 31, it says that those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. It does not say they will maintain it on their own. It says they will receive renewal, which means the strength you need is not something you generate. It is something you receive. And if your soul feels tired right now, it is not because you are failing. It is because you have reached the limit of what you can carry by yourself. The question is not whether you are exhausted. The question is whether you are willing to stop pretending that you are not. Because what comes next is even more difficult to admit, and even more important to understand. The feeling of being forgotten by God. There is a moment that many people never talk about openly, but almost everyone experiences at some point. It is not loud, it is not dramatic. It is a quiet thought that settles in your mind and refuses to leave. What if God is not paying attention to me? You do not say it out loud because it feels wrong to even think it, but it shows up in subtle ways, in the delay of answers, in the repetition of struggles, in the silence that stretches longer than you expected. You begin to look at your life and wonder why things are not changing, why doors are not opening, why the relief you prayed for has not come. And slowly, without realizing it, the question shifts. It is no longer just about your situation. It becomes personal. Did God forget me? This is where the weight becomes heavier, because now it is not just about pain. It is about perceived absence. It is about feeling unseen, unheard, and overlooked in a relationship that is supposed to be constant. You compare your journey with others. You see people sharing testimonies, breakthroughs, answers to prayers, and you cannot help but wonder why your story feels different. You try to stay faithful, but something inside you starts to feel disconnected. But listen carefully, because this is where perception begins to deceive you. Feeling forgotten is not the same as being forgotten. There is a difference between what you experience and what is actually true. And in seasons like this, your emotions can become louder than your understanding. They can convince you that silence means absence, that delay means rejection, that waiting means neglect. But none of those conclusions come from God. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, verse 15, it says that even if a mother could forget her child, God would never forget you. That is not poetry. That is a statement about His nature, which means what you are feeling right now does not reflect His attention. It reflects your perspective in the middle of a process you cannot fully see. There are things happening that you do not yet understand. There are movements that are not visible. There are answers that are not immediate, but are still in motion. The danger is not in the waiting. The danger is in what you start believing while you wait. Because if you begin to accept the idea that God has forgotten you, your faith does not disappear instantly. It erodes slowly. It weakens quietly. It becomes something you hold on to with less certainty and more doubt. And that is exactly where this moment becomes critical. Because what you believe about God in silence will shape how you experience Him when He speaks again. And if this belief has been forming inside you, then what you are about to confront next may be the reason it has been growing stronger. The danger of pretending spiritual strength. There is a silent pressure that many people carry without realizing it. The pressure to appear strong, stable, and full of faith at all times. You learn, sometimes without being told, that weakness should be hidden, that doubts should be controlled, that struggles should be managed quietly. So you adjust. You keep showing up with the right words. You maintain the right posture. You say you are fine even when you are not. You pray, but only in ways that sound acceptable. You speak to God, but you filter what you truly feel. And over time, something dangerous begins to form. A version of you that looks spiritually strong on the outside, but feels increasingly distant on the inside. The problem is not that you are trying to stay faithful. The problem is that you are no longer being honest. Because real strength in your relationship with God was never meant to come from performance. It was meant to come from connection. And connection cannot grow where honesty is missing. When you start pretending, even subtly, you begin to separate your real condition from your spiritual expression. You create a gap between what you feel and what you present. And that gap becomes a place where healing cannot fully reach. You stop bringing your full self to God. You bring a controlled version, a composed version, a version that tries to maintain dignity instead of seeking restoration. But here is what changes everything. God is not asking you to impress Him. He is not asking you to maintain an image. He is not responding to how polished your words sound. He responds to truth. In the book of Psalms, chapter 51, verse 17, it says that a broken and contrite heart God will not despise. That means He does not reject honesty. He welcomes it, which means the moment you stop pretending is the moment something real can begin. But pretending feels safer. It protects you from feeling exposed. It gives you a sense of control. It allows you to keep functioning without confronting what is actually happening inside you. And that is why it is dangerous. Because while you are maintaining the appearance of strength, the weight inside you continues to grow. The exhaustion deepens. The distance feels greater. Not because God moved away, but because you stopped allowing Him into the places where you are most real. The truth is simple, but not easy to accept. You do not need to be strong to be close to God. You need to be honest. And if you have been holding back what you truly feel, then what you are about to understand next may completely change how you see the silence you have been experiencing. The silence that carries purpose. There is a moment in every deep spiritual journey where the noise fades and something unfamiliar takes its place. Silence. Not the peaceful kind you expect, but a silence that feels unanswered, prolonged, and difficult to interpret. You pray, but the response does not come the way you imagined. You seek direction, but clarity seems delayed. You ask for relief, but the situation remains the same. And slowly, that silence begins to feel uncomfortable. Because you were not expecting this. You were expecting movement, confirmation, a sign that something is happening. But instead, you are left in what feels like stillness. And this is where most people misinterpret what is actually going on. Silence is often seen as absence. But in many cases, silence is not the absence of God. It is the method He is using to do something deeper than what you are asking for. Because when everything is loud, when answers come quickly, when direction is obvious, you stay focused on outcomes. But when silence enters, your attention shifts. You begin to confront what is happening inside you, not just around you. Silence exposes what noise hides. It reveals your fears, your expectations, your impatience, your need for control. It brings you face to face with the parts of your faith that were never fully tested. And that is not comfortable, but it is necessary. Because God is not only interested in changing your circumstances, He is committed to transforming you, and transformation rarely happens in noise. It happens in stillness. In the book of 1 Kings, chapter 19, verse 12, God was not found in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a gentle whisper. That means his presence is often revealed in ways that require stillness to be perceived. So what you are calling silence may actually be an invitation, not to wait passively, but to listen differently, to stop measuring God by immediate responses and start recognizing him in subtle movements, in shifts within your heart, in moments of awareness, in the quiet strength that begins to grow without explanation. The danger is not the silence itself. The danger is assuming that nothing is happening during it, because if you believe that, you will rush the process. You will try to force answers, create movement, or escape the discomfort. And in doing so, you may miss what this moment is trying to produce in you. There are things being formed in this silence that cannot be built any other way. Depth, trust, maturity. A faith that is not dependent on constant reassurance. And if you begin to understand that, the silence stops being something you fear and starts becoming something you respect. But to recognize that, you need to learn something most people overlook completely. The language of God beyond words. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for God to speak in ways they can clearly recognize. A direct answer, a clear sign, a voice that removes all doubt. And when that does not happen, they assume nothing is being said. But God does not limit himself to the ways you expect. There is a language he uses that goes beyond words, beyond sentences, beyond what you can easily explain. And if you are only listening for something obvious, you may completely miss what is already being communicated. Because sometimes God speaks through shifts, not statements. A sudden awareness that changes how you see something. A sense of restraint that stops you from making a decision. A quiet conviction that does not come from logic, but feels undeniable. These are not random. These are forms of guidance. But they are subtle. And that is why they are often ignored. You have been trained to value clarity in a very specific way. You want certainty, direction, confirmation. You want something you can hold on to without questioning. But spiritual communication does not always function like that. Sometimes it requires sensitivity instead of certainty. In the book of John, chapter 10, verse 27, it says that his sheep hear his voice. It does not say they always understand it immediately. It says they recognize it. Recognition is different from explanation. It means something in you responds, even before you can fully describe why. It means there is a connection that goes deeper than logic. But that connection can become weaker if you are constantly looking for louder signals. Because the louder your expectations become, the harder it is to perceive what is quiet. And this is where many people disconnect without realizing it. They stop noticing the small movements. They dismiss the subtle nudges. They overlook the internal shifts that are actually guiding them. They think God is silent, when in reality they have stopped listening in the right way. What if the answer you are waiting for has already begun, just not in the form you expected? What if the direction you are asking for is already unfolding, but you are measuring it against the wrong standard? Because when you begin to pay attention differently, something changes. You start to notice patterns. You become aware of timing. You recognize moments that carry meaning, even if they are not dramatic. And slowly, what once felt like silence starts to feel like presence. But there is something that can block this completely. Something that makes it almost impossible to perceive any of this, no matter how close it is. And that is what you need to confront next. The invitation to let go of control. There is something very subtle that keeps the weight on your heart longer than it should stay. It is not just the pain, not just the silence, not just the unanswered questions. It is your need to understand everything before you trust anything. You may not say it this way, but deep down, you are trying to maintain control. Control over outcomes, over timing, over how things should unfold. You want clarity before surrender. You want assurance before release. You want to know where this is going before you fully let go. And that is where the tension begins. Because the more you try to control what you cannot see, the heavier everything becomes. Your thoughts become crowded. Your emotions become unstable. Your faith begins to feel like effort instead of trust. You keep analyzing, revisiting, questioning. You try to connect the dots, predict the outcome, protect yourself from disappointment. But instead of finding peace, you find more pressure. Control gives the illusion of safety, but it quietly removes the possibility of rest. Because as long as you are holding everything together, you never truly release anything. You carry the responsibility, the expectation, and the emotional weight all at once. And this is where something needs to shift. Trust does not begin when you understand. Trust begins when you decide to release what you cannot control. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5, it says to trust in the Lord with all your heart and not lean on your own understanding. That is not a suggestion for easy moments. It is a direction for moments exactly like this. Because your understanding has limits. It is shaped by what you see, what you feel, and what you have experienced so far. But God is not limited to any of that. So when you try to control everything, you are not just holding on to your situation. You are holding on to a limited perspective and expecting it to carry you through something that requires more than what you currently see. Letting go is not losing control. It is releasing the pressure of needing to have it. It means you stop forcing answers. You stop trying to manage every possibility. You stop holding your breath waiting for certainty before you move forward. And this is not easy. Because letting go feels vulnerable. It feels uncertain. It feels like stepping into something without guarantees. But what you gain in that moment is something you cannot produce on your own. Relief. Not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer carrying it alone. And the moment you begin to release control, something unexpected starts to happen. What once felt like pure pain begins to shift into something else. Something that may change the way you see your struggles completely. The pain that becomes a place of encounter. You have been trying to escape the pain, and that is understandable. No one naturally chooses discomfort, confusion, or emotional weight. Your instinct is to move away from it, to resolve it, to make it stop as quickly as possible. But what if this pain is not only something to endure? What if it is also a place where something deeper is waiting to happen? Because there are moments in life when pain stops being just an obstacle and becomes a point of encounter. Not because the pain itself is good, but because of what it opens inside you. Pain has a way of removing distractions. It strips away what is superficial. It exposes what is real. When everything feels stable, you can rely on routines, habits, and surface-level faith. But when pain enters, all of that becomes insufficient. You begin to search differently. You begin to ask deeper questions. You begin to seek something real, not just something familiar. And that is where the encounter begins. Not in comfort, not in control, but in the place where you no longer have the strength to rely on yourself the same way you used to. In the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, it says that God's power is made perfect in weakness. That does not mean weakness is desirable. It means weakness creates space. Space where you stop depending only on what you can do. Space where something greater can begin to move in a way you would not have allowed before. Because as long as you feel strong enough, you tend to stay in control. But when that strength fades, something shifts. You become open in a way that is not forced but necessary. And this is where many people miss what is happening. They experience pain, but they only focus on ending it. They never pause to understand what it is revealing, what it is forming, what it is making possible. So they rush through it, resist it, or try to numb it. And in doing so, they avoid the very place where a deeper connection with God could have been established. This does not mean you should accept suffering passively. It means you should not waste it. Because within this moment, there is an opportunity. Not for immediate answers, not for instant relief, but for something more lasting. A connection that is not based on circumstances, but on presence. And when that connection begins to form, something becomes clear. Even when everything around you feels uncertain, there is something that has not changed at all. The love that remains even in silence. There is one truth that does not change, no matter how heavy your heart feels, no matter how long the silence lasts, no matter how unclear your situation becomes. The love of God does not fluctuate with your emotions, but this is exactly where many people struggle. Because when you feel distant, you assume He is distant. When you feel forgotten, you assume you are forgotten. When you feel nothing, you begin to question everything, and without realizing it, you start measuring God's love based on what you feel in the moment. That is where the confusion begins. Feelings are real, but they are not always reliable indicators of truth. They respond to circumstances, to expectations, to internal states that shift constantly. But God's love does not operate within those limitations. It remains, even when you do not feel it, even when you do not understand it, even when everything inside you questions it. In the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 38 and 39, it says that nothing can separate you from the love of God. Not trouble, not hardship, not anything present or anything to come. That is not conditional. That is absolute. Which means the silence you are experiencing has not interrupted His love. It has not weakened it. It has not distanced it. It has only challenged your perception of it. And that is where something important needs to shift. You have to stop looking for proof of His love only in visible answers. Because if you limit it to that, every delay will feel like rejection, every silence will feel like absence, and every unanswered question will feel like distance. But His love is not only revealed in what He does for you, it is revealed in who He is toward you. Consistent, present, unchanging. Even now, in this moment, nothing about His posture toward you has changed. You may feel uncertain, but He is not uncertain about you. You may feel distant, but He has not moved away. The challenge is that this kind of love requires trust, not confirmation. It requires you to believe in what remains true, even when your emotions are not aligned with it. And when you begin to anchor yourself in that, something starts to shift internally. The weight does not disappear instantly. The questions may still exist. But beneath all of that, something steady begins to form, a quiet assurance. And that assurance leads you into something that many people spend their entire lives searching for, but rarely understand. The new beginning that emerges in the middle of chaos. Most people believe that a new beginning requires a clear ending. They wait for resolution, for closure, for everything to make sense before they allow themselves to start again. But life does not always move that way, and neither does God. There are moments when nothing feels resolved, nothing feels stable, and yet something new is already trying to begin. Right in the middle of confusion, right in the middle of emotional weight, right in the middle of unanswered questions. That is where new beginnings are often born. But they do not look the way you expect. They are not always dramatic or obvious. They do not arrive with clarity or certainty. They begin quietly, almost unnoticed. A small shift in perspective, a subtle change in how you respond, a decision to keep going, even without having all the answers. And that is where many people miss it. They are waiting for a sign that everything is ready, when in reality, God is already moving within what feels incomplete. In the book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verse 22 and 23, it says that His mercies are new every morning. That means renewal does not depend on your circumstances being perfect. It is available even when everything still feels uncertain, which means you do not have to wait for everything to change before something new begins in you. You can begin again while you are still in the middle of it, not by forcing yourself to feel better, not by pretending everything is fine, but by allowing a new posture to form inside you. A posture of openness instead of resistance, a posture of trust instead of control, a posture of movement, even if it is slow and uncertain. Because a new beginning is not always about what is happening around you. It is about what is shifting within you. And when that internal shift starts, something powerful follows. You begin to see differently. You begin to respond differently. You begin to carry the same situation, but with a different weight. Not because the situation disappeared, but because something inside you is no longer the same. And that is where hope becomes real again, not as a distant idea, but as something present, something active, something growing even in the middle of chaos. But there is still something deeper than hope that needs to take root. Something that does not depend on change, timing, or outcomes. Something that remains, even when answers do not come. The peace that does not depend on answers. There is a kind of peace that most people are searching for, but they are looking for it in the wrong place. They believe peace will come when everything makes sense, when the answers arrive, when the situation finally resolves. But if peace depends on answers, then it will always be unstable. Because answers do not always come when you want them. Situations do not always resolve quickly, and life does not always follow a clear or predictable path. So if your peace is tied to outcomes, it will rise and fall with every change, every delay, every uncertainty. But there is another kind of peace, a peace that does not wait for clarity, a peace that does not require resolution, a peace that exists even when questions remain. And this is the peace that God offers. In the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 7, it describes a peace that surpasses all understanding. That means it goes beyond logic. It does not depend on explanation. It is not something you arrive at through reasoning. It is something you receive, which means you can experience peace even when you do not understand what is happening, even when things are still unresolved, even when your situation has not changed at all. But this kind of peace requires a shift. You have to stop trying to solve everything before you allow yourself to rest. Because as long as your mind is constantly searching for answers, analyzing every possibility, trying to predict what will happen next, you remain in a state of tension. You are always waiting for something external to give you permission to feel calm. But peace does not come from having control. It comes from releasing the need for it. It is a quiet confidence that even if you do not understand everything, you are not lost. Even if you do not see the outcome, you are not without direction. Even if nothing around you changes immediately, something within you can still be steady. And this steadiness is not something you force. It is something that begins to grow when you trust beyond what you can explain. It does not remove your questions. It does not eliminate your emotions. But it changes how those things affect you. Instead of being overwhelmed, you become anchored. Instead of being restless, you become grounded. Instead of being controlled by uncertainty, you begin to stand firm within it. And when this peace takes root, something becomes clear in a way it never did before. You start to see your entire journey differently, not as a series of disconnected moments, but as something that has been held together all along. When you finally understand, you were never alone. There comes a moment, not always loud, not always immediate, but undeniable, when something inside you begins to connect the pieces. Not perfectly, not with full clarity, but enough to see what you could not see before. You start to look back at the moments you thought you would not survive. Back at the nights that felt endless, back at the prayers that seemed unanswered, back at the silence that once made you question everything. And something shifts. You realize that even in those moments, you were not abandoned. Not once. You may not have felt it. You may not have recognized it. You may have questioned it more than once. But looking back, there is a pattern that becomes impossible to ignore. You were sustained. Not in the way you expected, but in the way you needed. Strength appeared when you thought you had none left. You kept going when stopping felt easier. You endured things that, at one point, you were sure would break you. And that does not happen by accident. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 31, verse 6, it says that God will never leave you nor forsake you. That was not written for easy moments. It was spoken for seasons exactly like the ones you have lived through. Which means even when you felt alone, you were not alone. Even when it felt silent, you were not unheard. Even when it seemed like nothing was happening, something was holding you together. And now, standing where you are, you begin to understand something deeper than answers. Presence. Not the kind that depends on feelings, not the kind that appears only when everything is clear, but the kind that remains, steady and unshaken, through every moment you have lived. And this changes how you move forward. Because now, even if new challenges come, even if new questions arise, there is something you carry with you that you did not have before. Certainty. Not certainty about outcomes, but certainty about who walks with you through them. So if your heart still feels heavy right now, hear this clearly. You are not carrying it alone. You never were, and you never will be.